We're probably going to get started early since we only have an hour and there are 9 million of you. We can get more questions that way. Welcome to MMORPG's Future of Online Games panel here at PAX Prime 2013. Yay! I love it for the crap. So I'm over here, I'm the managing editor of MMORPG.com. And today we are lucky enough to pull together 5 of the most talented and brightest minds in the MMO industry. These guys are leading the next few years of MMO design, and they're here to answer your questions and tell you what they think the MMO genre is headed. Before we get started, let me introduce our panelists. First, we have Paul Sage, the creative director on ZeniMax Online's Elder Scrolls Online. We have Dave Georgeson, the director of development for Sony Online Entertainment and EverQuest Next. We have Miguel Caron, the studio head of behavior entertainment on Warhammer 40K Eternal Crusade. Jeremy Gaffney, the executive producer of Carbine Studios and Wildstar. And last but most certainly not least, Isaiah Cartwright of ArenaNet and Guild Wars 2. So, we have just a few rules to follow before we get started. Number one is that questions should be genre-specific, not game-specific. I know you might want to have something specific for any one of these guys' games, but they will get to it, I promise. And also try to keep them kind of short because, again, we're short on time. Trolls probably be dealt with pretty harshly. We have a nice lady named back there who's going to punch you in the face if you... And number 3, only one question per person. That doesn't mean you can't file to the back of the line, but just do one question so that way the next person behind you can go. And now I want you all to line up behind that microphone right there if you have a question. And she's pointing to it. She's short, but she's there. If you have a question, and in the meantime while you're lining up, I'm going to go ahead and ask the first question because I'm awesome. Gentlemen, all this talk about sandboxes and theme parks, free-to-play and subscriptions, why do you think the genre and the fans and the development studios are so divided over how to get the MMO right? And how do you think it should be done right? We'll start off with Isaiah.
You know, I think some of the fun about MMOs is it brings such a diversity of people. The games always try to cast a very wide net, and they get lots of different play styles, from a hardcore player to a casual player to a PvP player or a PvE player, and it goes on and on, a list of kind of different types of people that the games attract. And I think when developers are looking at how they want to build their game or their business model or whatever, I think they're always trying to accompany different types of crowds or as many crowds as they can. And so I really think that change leads to an array of different styles of games, business models, things that we're aiming at, and we're always trying to kind of push the envelope in as many different areas as we can. It feels like we make every kind of game when we can MMO.
No, it's absolutely true. You are in fact making many types of games when you build an MMO. And in fact, there is no single one way to make an MMO that is right. Those of us who are starting to push the boundaries are basically, that's our whole mantra, is we don't think that there is just one way to build a virtual world that other people can participate in. So there's lots of ideas. We're all creative people that have made lots and lots of games. There's many ways to skin a cat. And I think that we're all starting to push in different directions to not only discover the one way, but the many ways that this can be fun and exciting for everybody.
So, theme parks, very expensive to build, and they're consumed. You play them once in each piece of content, and the replayability tends to come from making more of it and adding to it. Sandboxes, on the other hand, are sort of more inherently compelling because they're gameplay, and it's more inherently the systems are repeatable or the systems are engaging, which is where the drives, I think, for both of those come from. And so I think both we will see succeed. And I think blends are going to tend to be the right combination of those two. One downside of sandboxes is if you design them poorly, then you have a few people who win, and then everybody else kind of feels like they're losing because they're not the best at whatever the sandbox game is. And so I think that tends to drive people away from a natural-based sandbox design that's wise. A few sandbox games have done really well, and many have not. Conversely, in the theme park, everybody can win. because everybody's just going on the rides together. And so that has its own compellingness to it as well, but it also gives maybe a lesser appeal to the world as a whole. So I think that's why that debate continues, is there's no perfect answer.
Yeah, so I think for me, one of the things that we need to do is get away from what type of game is this and more just talk about the experience you want to create. You know, when we talk about The Last of Us, or if we talk about games like Uncharted, we just go out and we say, are those first-person shooters, are they third-person shooters, what are those games? Instead, what we think is, that's, oh my God, that was a killer experience, right? And that's what we're really trying to do up here, you know, regardless of the genre, wherein we're trying to create a great game and, you know, get people into great communities. And so I think that's what we're going to see, which is getting away from what type is it, is it theme park, is it sandbox, and more just, oh Jesus, that was a kick-ass experience.
You should have like a stroke in the middle of that response.
I'm not enough.
It's hard to add some stuff after this good panel, but I'd say, first of all, the studio has to decide on the gameplay that makes the dev passionate about their game. How can you sell emotion? How can you sell passion if the dev themselves don't feel it? So I guess this is, you know, the genre, trying to put people in a box or trying to put a game in a box, that's the wrong way to do it. It's about what you guys want to feel and providing that feeling for you. And unfortunately, MMOs, I've had a lot of huge failure in the past, and your expectations are very high. So right now it's really to listen to you and engage the community to make sure that we do the right thing for you.
All right, first question back there, go ahead.
Hi, I've been an MMO player since I was first launched years and years ago. And probably one of my favorite games to have a lot of fond memories of the Star Wars Galaxies. And what made that world so separate.
Could you talk into the mic a little bit closer?
Oh, is this better?
Yes.
Okay. As one of my favorite games of Star Wars Galaxies, and it had a lot more to do with, instead of the theme park content, it was much more of, you know, the player base and how being crafted could actually matter, going out and finding the minerals and finding and having the houses and building the player cities, and like all of that stuff has been dead in MMOs for a decade now. And you guys see any of that kind of gameplay coming in the future? I mean,
very loaded question. We'll start with
Thank you for that question.
So we'll start at the other end of the table this time. We'll start with Miguel.
Can you restate the question?
The question was, do you see the world of like sandboxes coming back, where people can actually build player towns and make content, and crafting was actually important again?
Yeah, it's coming back, and it's coming back in a different flavor. It's coming back either building stuff, building town, building buildings, or it's coming back in a way where, as you can see in Neverwinter, the Foundry, it's coming back where we give power to the player to actually create their own content. And like our game, as an example, is 100% player driven. So the player creates the content and they make the mission, but they don't build buildings, but they actually create the content of the game. So in that way, the theme park is coming back to the MMO, yes.
So I started with you up, right? So that was a huge sandbox type game. You know, they have their great aspects to them. You know, much of what you mentioned, which is player community being developed really easily. I think what we'll see is we will see a lot of you know, sandboxes come back where you can build cities and things like that and build up your community. What I think will happen is that there'll be one or two standouts there, and I'm really curious to see which ones do stand out. And then we'll kind of see it all go into a cycle again. But eventually, like I said, I think it's going to get back to it's just an entertaining game, or it isn't.
Yeah, good game sell. Regardless of sandbox, theme park, whatever. Someone makes a great game, and all of a sudden that's the trend. And in particular on that, the nice thing about sandboxes, there's a lot of them to make that have not yet been done well. Memorable sandboxes since you owe would be Eve, of course. I think is an excellent example. The Second Life, is the sort of ultimate sandbox. But the ultimate sandbox comes with issues too, like giant 7-foot penises walking around. Some people draw dirty pictures in sandboxes, and so you'll see that kind of. I think there's currently a wave of those coming. Archage is a great game to look at right now. Made by Georgeson, super good. He's made like 2 or 3 of the biggest games ever in Korea. Korea's pretty big on market itself. There's another, obviously, ZeniMax coming down the pike it seems like they're embracing sandbox pretty fully. And so yes, they're slowly coming. They're very hard to make. They're very hard to make.
Yeah, I'm actually a huge fan of sandboxes. I've made a lot of sandbox games in the past, or led teams that did so. A lot of the free-form combat sort of games are generally sandbox oriented, like the old Mech 2 games, Tribes, things like that. They're wide open sandboxes, not necessarily traditionally called sandboxes, but it's still essentially players determining their own fate and finding their own fun. And that's the real trick. If you're going to make a successful sandbox, it's not enough to just make it so that the players can affect the world and cause change. It actually has to be a fun experience. So like on an individual level, your game has to be fun on a regular basis. And if that falls apart or you don't feel that that's fun long term, then you have a failed sandbox because it won't last. So that's the real trick in sandboxes, but yeah, I'm a giant fan and I'm pretty sure they're on the way back.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the stuff that you see a lot of sort of the older MMOs, as technology advances and we get into kind of different types of modeling and those types of things, it can slow down doing different types of things. And I think some of that, along with the kind of breathability of some of the systems, had led people to just shy away from them. And I think as the design starts figuring out all the different pieces and the problems and really giving the player more control over what's going on in the game and being able to interact and build things. We're seeing a lot more of that start to come back as people get better and better with working with the technology that is always kind of advancing in front of you. And so, I think that type of sandbox, thing really will start to come back, and there's a lot of interaction where the players get to kind of work in the world, and the world starts to become living and breathing and more alive. And so, I definitely think those are big systems that people really enjoy and really like, and they always kind of look back to those older games, and everyone falls in love with the first MMO they ever played. And so, they look back to those other things and go, where did they go?
I want to say that that's not being farting. That's instruction. Ebony, Nathan. Okay, next question, please.
Yes, when you guys, that's a lot closer than I thought. By the way, thank you for taking my question. My question is more directed toward the creative process and where it ends up and what you start with. I feel that a lot of the games start with grandiose ideas and a lot of content. For example, SWTOR, Star Wars Galaxies, and for example, the one he's working on Eternal Crusade, and I go back to the Age of Reckoning that was created, and they added so much things that it never got balanced, and you couldn't enjoy it for the first week. On the other hand, when you see World of Warcraft, when you saw Guild Wars 2, it came out amazing. Like within that week, they were overflooded with passionate players. Where do you draw the line to say too much is too much, and let's get the simple core things going, but take out, the unnecessary stuff. Like in the words of World of Warcraft, the developers is polish. That's the question.
Another good question. Nice, yeah.
So, I think when MMOs set off, they're always trying, like I was saying, that kind of wide net, trying to get as many people as you can. And when you get down to having to polish all of those things, it's going to be hard. And I really think MMOs used to compete mostly with each other. And I think now that almost all games, all genres are starting to take on a lot of the elements of MMOs, whether it be progression or the social aspects. And so the competitive space for an MMO is a lot higher. You care about every game that comes out and how it's going to affect your audience. And a lot of people are going to try to play everything. I think gamers start to play lots of different games across all different kinds of systems. And so those things really lead to I think MMOs having to focus and polish things a lot more and maybe do a little less things in different places because everyone's expecting a lot higher polish. And it's a really interesting tension because when you're developing the game, you're building it, you don't want to cut things, you don't want to reduce it, you want to deliver everything to the player, you want to give them all of the tools and everything, and the reality is you just always can't. So that's some of the hardest things I think to developing MMO is deciding what needs to be cut so that you have the time to polish everything. And it can be really interesting what results in that with the game.
Yeah, the question isn't even really MMO specific. It's more just basically building a game in the first place. You have to identify what the core elements of your game are and why they're fun, and then don't settle for 85%. It's something I talk to my teams all the time about. It's really easy to get to 85% finished. It's really, really hard to get that last 15% done, to get all the nuance and everything that's in there. And so you have to build your schedule in such a way that you're concentrating on the things that are absolutely key to your game and polish those things up really fun. Because if you get those key elements done, then, well, everything